Hey everybody, welcome back to Wrath of Cortex. We've got another 5 time trials to deal with, so we're going to jump straight in over at Jungle Rumble. So like some of the other levels in this world, this is a 2-part level, which means we have basic platforming to start off with, and then we're going to jump into a gimmick. There's no point in jumping up to that exclamation mark box because it just fills in a bunch of TNTs. So the first stage of the level, pretty standard for these time trials. Just take off like you stole something, basically. You don't have to, with the double jump, we don't have to bounce all up those, so we can just a quick double jump onto the highest to get that 3, another 3 there. Hit the TNT to grab that 1. I think it's a pair of 2s behind those TNTs. But 30 seconds when we get to the Jeep. And now we're just blasting through here, and this is where you really start to see the time trials. Running it during the time trials is actually quite a lot harder than running it regularly. Because if you remember our first run through this level, remember there were apples all over this track alerting us to where the ramps were, where there were nitros, basically showing us the safe path through this whole section. But in time trial there are no apples, so we're just left up to our memory, our reactions, our instincts to avoid the pits, hit the jumps, and avoid the nitros. So your general best strategy is to stay in the middle of the track as much as possible, because that gives you the best chance of swerving to get to the ramps. Then once the Jeep crashes, it's just a straight sprint to the finish, and I like the straight sprint. No obstacles, just getting there. A relatively easy gold. And next, it's a water level. Water level relics are about as much fun as you'd expect, but they do actually allow one of the powers we haven't really used that much to really come into its own, and there it is, the tornado spin. That effectively acts as a giant booster, because you move a lot faster in the water when you're spinning, and it allows you to just blast through some of the more awkwardly placed sequence of time stops that are scattered around this level. You notice I'm not being too anal about grabbing the time stops here. This is actually my second main sequence of runs going through this level. The first time I ran through it I got the Sapphire, which will not do for this LP purposes. That's another shot of how useful having an Aku Aku can be, just to tank those TNTs and not have to wait for them to blow. Things change a little bit once you get to the sub, because obviously we don't have the tornado spin in the sub, so it's just a case of just mashing the square button, just constantly shooting missiles. If there are any enemies in the way, you'll get them. If there are any time stops in the way, you'll get them. If there are any nitros, you get the idea. This little tube, you may remember, had the big long row of nitros that screwed us our first time through. And it's quite interesting that in this version, in the time trial version of the level, they're replaced by time stops. It's kind of weird. I can't think of many other places anywhere in the game where nitros are replaced by time stops. There's the one in that big pile there, but because everything else around it is nitro, it's not really making it much less of a hazard. Yeah, just that huge cluster of time stops that come towards the end of the level means that in pretty much the last third of the level you can keep the clock frozen. I wouldn't say it's an easy platinum, because as I said, my first run was Sapphire. But once you've learnt that the tornado spin gives you a giant boost of speed, you should be at least capable of getting the platinum. Now this is our first Coco. This is our first Coco time trial. And I've been making a big thing throughout pretty much the entire thing about how Coco doesn't get any of Crash's special abilities. Obviously, she does get to use the... What Crash has is the spinning belly flop, but with Coco it just makes her spin around a bit when she does the stomp and makes her shockwave a little bigger. But she does get the sprint, thankfully. So we can still blast through these time trials. First stage of the level, going through that Zen Garden, isn't too much of a problem. Those two salamanders there, maybe salamanders, Komodo dragons, whatever. They proved to be something of a problem, just because you spin one, and then chances are when you're done with the spin, you're gonna run into the other. So it's best to just try and keep to either the foreground or the background, so you only have to deal with one of them. There are Aku Aku boxes everywhere on this level as well. There are actually 3, so if you get them going through the level and don't end up losing one. But at this point you will have the invincibility, and that's very useful, just allowing you to blast through practically the vast majority of the dangerous parts of the end of the level. All those time stops under the kind of pagoda-like area, they're not necessary. I grabbed them on one run and I think they actually slowed me down. But more gold. And gold is all that matters. This level is fun as hell. The clock is a bit awkwardly placed. Like you have to be pulling straight up. But other than that, there is absolutely no reason you shouldn't be getting the platinum on this level. Like in the last flight level we had, it's just a case of continuing around in a circle, and it's actually made a lot easier with the dragonfly because of the homing missiles. So you can get your target from a distance, fire it off, and then as soon as it's fired, turn around and start aiming at the next one. Of course there are the time stops as well, so if you're crisscrossing the island, you're going to be running into those pretty much all the time anyway. So it's not too hard to grab a hold of all the time stops without negatively affecting your run. But just 2 more missiles to go, and this one is dealt with. 51.4 seconds. The relic time, the platinum relic time, is I believe 1 minute 15. So that should go some way to telling you how easy that platinum is. More water levels. You can actually shoot the clock. You can actually shoot the clock with a missile, and it will start the time trial. I don't think that's actually of any use, because you're just grabbing the clock from further away and increasing the distance you have to travel. But it's a nice thing, and possibly a devious trap for the people who are just gonna start this level out blasting. You want to spam missiles? There you go, you're starting the time trial early. That mine there is a big danger. There's not enough space to get up that little section of ocean floor without hitting it. So if you haven't got an Aku Aku, you're going to be dying at that point. And given that the first Aku Aku in this level is there, you can pretty much figure out. So once you've cleared the sub, this level really isn't that hard, provided you can have an Aku Aku around. These electrical floors aren't too much of a problem. Having the double jump, which we didn't have going through this level the first time, makes things a lot easier. As does the tornado spin. I don't use it in this run, but because you can use it as a glide, it makes it a lot easier to cover large distances around that area. I like that little touch when you're sprinting around and suddenly change direction. That Crash will skid his feet slightly. Once you get to this section of the level, it's pretty much over. Those laser beams are no threat whatsoever. So it's nice easy gold. And that's that warp room done. You can admire there our alternating sets of precious metals, and we'll be dealing with the fire room next. So see you then. Bye bye.